Hey, Margie here. Today I'm answering your osteoporosis questions. As many of you know, I hosted a very large summit with 55 guest speakers and all about natural approaches to osteoporosis and bone health. And after that, my goal is really to help everyone as much as possible. But I recently had a Q&A and I invited everybody in my community too. And I got almost 300 questions, and I realized, obviously, I couldn't answer all of those, and I thought, "Wouldn't that be great? Let me choose some of them that kept coming up, and why don't I answer them on the podcast?" So that's what I'm doing today. We talk about all sorts of things, when to use medication and exercise, and the last thing is, like, what to do about gardening, how you can maintain a good posture in the garden. So we have all different areas we're discussing, and to help me is my husband, Dr. Craig Bissinger, who's an OB-GYN, and he's been working with women for so many years and deals with these type of questions. So I thought he'd be the perfect person that we can have a discussion on this and really try to give you answers and a path forward. So lots of great information. Stay tuned. Welcome, Craig, to the podcast.
I'm really happy you invited me today. Thanks, Marge.
I'm so glad that we're doing this because people ask such good questions. And I just want to jump in and get started because everybody's on their own path and there's so much confusing information out there. And I want to try to make it as easy as possible for people. So let's get started.
Well, as you know, I have kind of gone through this list of questions with you, and I've got some stumpers on here for you today, and I hope you're ready for them. But I'm going to read most of these off because this is your words. These aren't mostly my words. So here we go. The first one. I was recently diagnosed with osteoporosis in my lower spine, and now my doctor wants to put me on meds. Asked to see a physical therapist, and she laughed, saying she never heard of therapy for osteoporosis. I am seeing a chiropractor and I'm taking vitamin D. Hmm. I know a therapist who's done osteoporosis for a long time. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes. And I mean, that was just such a crazy thing for a physician to say and unusual because truly all doctors, conventional doctors, work with physical therapists on a regular basis, typically orthopedists. So possibly your internist or even, I mean, I know you, Craig, as an OB-GYN order physical therapy all the time, but that's probably because you're married to me. Is that something typical that OBs do, order physical therapy on a regular basis?
Probably not for osteoporosis, but for the pelvic floor and other things, sure.
Exactly. So I think that answer that they thought that was crazy is to me, that's crazy because the physical therapist is the exercise piece is something every single person, regardless of how strong you are or how weak you are, it doesn't matter where you start. Every person can improve their bone health by some type of exercise. So I think exercise is absolutely essential. Even just improving your posture, a physical therapist will be able to see if there's restrictions and different issues that may need a physical therapist to work with you, loosening up different structures. So I think from a structural point of view, physical therapy is essential. I think in terms of learning, regardless of where you're starting, how to do strength training, which has been shown to increase bone density. And the other thing is for balance. So many people as we get old, we don't use it, we lose it. We really have issues with balance, which leads to falls, which is the biggest thing we want to prevent. So I think for so many reasons, the physical therapist is an absolutely essential component of this program. And the good news for most people, at least in the United States, it's covered by insurance. So I think that, I would just go, and this is the thing. Oftentimes the doctor will not recommend it. They're not going to say, oh, yes. They may say to you, typically what you got, the information, calcium and vitamin D. Okay. And we can talk about this later, but a lot of times how much calcium? Well, more is not better. So you don't want more than maximum 1,200 from combined food and supplements. And vitamin D is important. And the good news is you can see your vitamin D level. It's called the 25 hydroxy vitamin D. And the doctor can help you figure out where you're at. So you're not just arbitrarily taking an amount in vitamin D. So that was good information. There's a lot more that's not enough in terms of the vitamins and minerals. but that, that's certainly a start, but the exercise is essential. So I think that you can ask another doctor, I would actually have another person involved with my care if that's their philosophy that physical therapy won't help. In many states, you don't even need the doctor to order the physical therapy. And so yes for physical therapy. And you just unfortunately, this is something you have to be your own advocate and you can have help. And that's what I'm here to do as well. But a lot of times, people just say, "Oh, whatever the doctor says, I'm gonna do," and unfortunately, that's not always you need to dig deeper
Well,
when it comes to osteoporosis.
I think one of the important things that we all know is that you can actually hurt yourself by doing exercise. And I can tell you how many times you've told me in the past that people came in injured because of the exercises they selected. They thought the more weight they used was better, and pulling things down, kind of on their backs and stuff to help them out also led to damage. So I concur with you. And I think it's essential that people go to for therapy to at least educate them on proper body mechanics and way to exercise.
Absolutely, and that's how I got started actually in this when, many years ago, a group of doctors who was working with people with osteoporosis asked me as a physical therapist to see their patients. And, people who are so well-intentioned were just doing exercises that increase their risk of fractures, and it was very upsetting. They were going to the local gym and doing, toe touches, and, as we know, rounding increases your risk of fractures of the spine. And so and I just couldn't believe it. So I think, getting the guidance of a physical therapist who trained in osteoporosis is just going to make a big difference and not trying to do it on your own and not trying to, read the literature, even if you're someone who looks at all the research. Okay, this study showed this, so I will do these exercises. It's really good to make sure you're doing it in good posture, good mechanics, with the assistance of someone who's trained.
Good answer. I appreciate that. I learned a lot about that just from listening to you in the past. So thank you. Number two, I was recently diagnosed with osteoporosis by DEXA scan, and my doctor wants me to go on Phosphonate. But I've heard that this is bad and can cause your bones to become more brittle. Is that true?
Okay, here's the situation. Well, first of all, what I want to tell everyone is in episode 186, because medication is something people ask me about all the time. And I think the interest, and this happened after the very first summit, I realized that yes, we want to do things as natural as we can. And absolutely every single thing, and we'll go into that today more, that really comprises a very good program for osteoporosis, both prevention and treatment is critical, regardless of what you do. But there are people who have things going on, who have very low bone density, perhaps a -4 or other issues going on that we don't want anyone to fracture. We really don't. So there is a time and a place for some of the medications in conjunction with everything else. And I had Dr. Keith McCormick, who is just absolutely brilliant when it comes to this, and he's right now an Ironman, but at age 45, he had serious osteoporosis. I think it was -4.5 was his DEXA, so very low bone density, and he had to really learn how to do combination medication and all of the other important factors that I teach in terms of improving his bone density. So with all that research, he's been doing this now for many, many, many years. He has, I think, really just a great way of explaining when you would use the medications, what they're used for, the pros and the cons. And so we have a whole podcast, 1 hour on this. So it's I'll leave the link with this podcast, but it's episode 186, and I you'll really learn a lot from that. So definitely go to that in terms of the Fosmex. But in terms of the Fosm, the problem is a lot of times the physician, and this is their training, I don't fault them because this is how they're trained. You get a DEXA score, one piece of information, and it says -2.5, which means you're 2.5 standard deviations away from the bone density of a 30-year-old. Doesn't tell you anything about bone quality. there's so many other issues that are missing when we just get that one piece of information. And based upon that, they'll tell you, okay, you need to start something because they want to stop more bone loss. So the Fosamax is one of the medications that's in a class of drugs called bisphosphonate. And what that does, there are cells called osteoclasts that break down bone, and there are cells called osteoblasts that builds up bone. So you can have too much activity in the osteoclast. You're breaking all this bone down. So all of what the bisphosphonates do, they stop that. They stop the osteoclast. They reduce that. And and so in there are some situations where it can be helpful for a short period of time to figure out what's causing all this breakdown of bone. But they have not shown that the Fosamax actually increases. It may show a slight increase in bone density, but not bone quality. And so the density, when you get that DEXA score, over 50% of fractures occur for people that don't have osteoporosis. It could be osteopenia. So there's not the greatest correlation between what's on the DEXA test and fractures. And so we want to look at bone quality as well. So the point is, the Fosamax will just improve very slightly. It can improve bone density without affecting the bone quality. And so because it doesn't, it just stops the breakdown of bone and it stops the bone turnover. So your question is depending if it would be helpful. There's so many other things you can start with, and you really need to figure out what's causing before anyone should go on a medication. They need to figure out what's causing the bone. And as Dr. McCormick said, you really need to figure out. I'm a very big believer in bone marker turnovers. So there's something called a CTX test, and that's showing how much bone are you losing? What's the activity of the osteoclast? Because it would be, people are put on on Fosamax, and if they're not actively losing bone, what is it doing? It's not helping. So I could go into this in way more detail, but just listen to that episode. It will explain it and explain when those are possible, when those can be useful, but there's so many other things to start with, and you really need to see what's going on and what root causes, etcetera. So I know that was a long answer to that question.
I think that's a long answer to a very important question. How about that?
Yeah,
So
okay, great.
let's go on to one more question in this whole category, which was, what do I do if my endocrinologist tells me I have postmenopausal osteoporosis, and my orthopedist says that I have it because of my age and I should go on estrogen, whereas my endocrinologist has an idea about putting me on a totally different class of drugs that I have to take shots for. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. I mean, this is what people are faced with every day. You get different information. First of all, there's no one answer. There really isn't one answer when it comes to this. That's why you have to be as knowledgeable as possible, because certain doctors just have their thing that they do. This is, so it's really important that you're not just with your basic internist, you're with a specialist who does this all the time. Because am I right about that, Craig, that you find people have certain things they do and that, okay, this one uses reclass and that's sort of their basic thing that they do. And this one does this, where you really want someone who understands if medication is something that really is necessary, that
Right.
you really need to consider all the different possibilities. Do you agree with me on that? That different doctors are gonna have different ways of looking at things?
Absolutely. And I think the important thing to remember is you can take time to pause and reflect and do more investigation before you commit to any of these treatments. Right, Mark?
Absolutely. I think that's the most important thing actually that we've said all day, is that when you get this diagnosis, it's so over, and we've had a whole podcast episode on this, and we talked about this, is that, you get the diagnosis, or we did it on the summit actually. You get this diagnosis, it's so overwhelming, and you're so afraid, and there's so much information, and you know, it's okay to just stop, take a breath, and look at it like, okay, and as I always say, it's a blessing in disguise, because you see something's going on in your body. You may not have any symptoms. And when you get this opportunity, and I look at it as an opportunity to look at your life in different areas. And when you address these different areas, there's really good news that things get better. And you look back and do think this is a blessing in disguise. And that's what I've seen. I've been doing this for over 25 years. But I think pause. It's not an emergency. It's not. Pause and, gather information, and then you can figure out what to do. It's not something is that, you have a serious infection that you need to go on an antibiotic right away. It's not that type of situation. And different doctors are going to have different opinions on what you can do. And the good news is next week on the podcast, I'm having Dr. Felice Gersh, who's an expert on bioidentical hormones, and she's given talks all over the world really on estrogen and this. And so she's going to answer all the estrogen questions. So we'll be more informed about that as well. But yes, so I think, there's different opinions, and I think and a lot of doctors, just want to put you on medication because that's what they know. Am I right, Craig?
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's okay to say, and again, there are situations, if you're someone that's at very high risk for a fracture, the new medications, the anabolics, which actually build bone, there is a place for that. There is a place because nobody wants to have a fracture. It's so much better to prevent a fracture, and you don't have to stay on those forever. So that's why I'm saying I'm not going to go into it today, but there's a whole hour podcast, and we went in detail in medication. So if you have that question, I just strongly recommend listening to Dr. McCormick. But also, I've told people to talk to the doctor and say, you know what? I realize I haven't been exercising. Again, depending where you're at. If you're not, in the high, let's say you have minus 2.5, you just found out that I want to see maybe there's some root causes. I also want to see I haven't been exercising. I want to make some changes in my eating. I have a lot of stress in my life. So I'm going to really work on all these and let's see what happens with my bone density. And most people, again, I believe in not alienating your doctor. I believe in bringing them into it. And typically the doctors will say, okay, let's wait a year and you can do all of those things. And if you're seeing an integrative doctor, they can monitor other things. They can monitor, as I said, the bone markers. Are you losing bone? Are you gaining bone? What's happening? And I recommend that actually anybody going on a medication, you do the bone markers beforehand because you will know in 3 months. Let's say you did decide to go on Forteo or Evenity, or one of the Timlos, one of the medications that actually builds bone and stimulates. And if you decided to go on one of those, you want to know, is this working or not? So you can check the bone markers before and 3 months after and see, because wouldn't it be a shame to wait, minimum a year to see any improvement on the DEXA and it isn't working? So same thing with really any medication. So I'm just a big believer in the bone markers. And if the doctors don't do that, then I really suggest finding somebody who does. So anyway, did I answer that whole question?
Oh, very, very fully. Thank you. But we need to move on here a little bit to
Okay.
other really pressing topics, which is strontium, which I know you get
Okay.
a lot of people talking about that one too. I know there's a lot of questions about that. And do they really help you build stronger bones? And since this is a topic that's been plaguing us for decades, I know you've already done a lot of research. I thought you could share some of that today with everybody.
Yes, this is really, really important because I get asked this question all the time and it's in supplements. And so what happens is strontium, it's a trace element and it's found in seawater and soil. And it has a chemical similar, like its composition is similar to calcium. So what happens is that it can replace calcium in the bones. So taking strontium for a period of time, here's what happens. It actually can so what happens is it's a heavier metal. It's similar to calcium, but the atoms are actually heavier than calcium. So when you swap out some of the calcium for strontium, it appears when they look at the bone density test, it's like, oh, wow, the bone density has increased, but it hasn't improved the structure of the bones. It hasn't really increased. So it's not accurate. So the sad thing is, it all of a sudden now the bone density test can't be accurate if you've taken strontium. And that's a real problem because it's not really improving your bone quality and it's just improving it's showing that it looks better on the DEXA test. And there was a case recently that I saw. The University of Pennsylvania had people working there. They had a 61-year-old woman who fractured her sternum. And whenever there's a fracture, they do an osteoporosis workup. And sure enough, she had osteoporosis. And she chose to go to an integrative doctor. And anyway, one of the what the doctor had done is put her on strontium. So she comes back 3 years later, much with really improvement in the bone density. It was almost remarkable. It was like 20% in the hip and 31 or 32% in the lumbar spine after 3 years. And they were really, you know, surprised, like, what happened? But they realized they couldn't use this information because she had been on strontium. So I think so that's number 1. Number 1, it now makes the bone density test inaccurate. And we need that. That's very helpful. But there are other issues as well. And so in terms of the research from Europe was on strontium renally. That was the first thing that was done, and it's different. But they started using it, and it was actually a prescription drug, but they stopped because it showed increased risk of heart attacks, blood clots, and serious skin reaction, something called the DRESS syndrome. And so because of that, then they stopped it, and recently they've actually now they have another different type of, strontium renally that is available with all sorts of precautions. So in the United States, then what they have is just a supplement, and that's called strontium citrate, but none of these have been tested by the FDA. They don't really know the effectiveness, and so they don't even know if your bone they really don't have enough information. There could be serious side effects, and it makes the DEXA test inaccurate. So, I think for all those reasons, I would say, I always tell people not to have a go on strontium. And it's sad because I've seen people that were taking certain supplements that have strontium in it, and they're so excited. It increased their bone density. But it didn't improve bone quality at all. It could have even reduced bone quality. And so now we're left with not knowing if the treatment plan that you're doing is being effective or not. So I think it's a real problem, and I never recommend anything that has strontium in it. So that is my answer on strontium. And I know other people. I spoke to many of the doctors on the summit, and really people are not recommending it at all. Um, I know Dr. Neustadt said that, yeah, where maybe, it could help in some possibilities. The risk of the blood clots and cardiac issues is just not worth it. And again, the effects of on the DEXA test. So anyway, yeah, we're saying no to strontium.
Okay, we'll move on to, does a rebounder provide enough ground force to stimulate your bones?
This is such a good question because I've been asked this before, and my answer was always, and I personally do a rebounder. That's the trampoline and that you can jump on. But bones respond to the forces placed upon them. So my answer in the past was, I don't know. I really don't know because there's not that much force when you're going on the trampoline, other than when you're jumping on the ground. You're not getting the same forces. Bones respond to the forces placed on it. So when you're jumping, you're getting forces through the bones against gravity. Where on the trampoline, it's not that much force because it's a trampoline. So my answer was, I always don't know. I think it's great for lymph flow. It helps the lymph flow. You feel good. You're exercising. I mean, I love it. I do it. But in terms of increasing bone, my answer was always, I don't know. There was a study done, though, in Australia in 2019 that did show that it was effective for building a small amount of bone. And what they did, they had an intervention twice a week for 12 weeks, but it's a long time, 45 to 60 minutes. That's a very long time. And they did balance, strength, and jumping exercises. And they did find that they had no change in the lumbar spine and just a 2% increase in bone density at the femoral neck. But again, it's a lot, 45 to 60 minutes twice a week. They did show, though, that improvements in balance, improvements in, they had reduced fear of falling, mobility. So there were positive things. Again, you have to be careful, because I would always suggest, if your balance isn't good, you could fall off. And we don't want to fall off of this at all. They make them, though, that you can hold on. So, I think there's good, as I said, I personally do it because I like it. if you're gonna do that, if you only have limited time as your only area, I would say, we don't know enough. It was just a minimal increase in bone density, but what we do know, just because of this, is that, they did do a study of jumping on 1 foot. Now, not that I'm recommending this for everybody, and they looked over a period of time, and they did see that people who did that jumping increased bone density in that hip area because the forces do, we know that. That's a given now that, bones respond to forces. So even I always have an exercise where I have people go up on their toes and gently down on their heels. So it's, putting force through the bones. Anyway, but that's the answer to the one. There is one study that did show a slight amount. So I thought that was exciting actually. So
So we're not advocating that our patients jump on 1 foot. Is that
no, no.
okay, just making sure that
Yeah,
okay.
I was just saying anyone who I mean, jumping, for children and for people who it depends where your bone density is, but jumping certainly does. So I recommend, kids play hopscotch, jump, do everything really through your life. The jumping does increase bone density, and it depends on the state of your skeleton and your posture and everything else. But no, that's not for everybody to and that's what happens. People will read that article and start jumping in 1 foot and, depending on what their situation is, could hurt themselves. So that's why I love working with a physical therapist who can help you custom design your program.
All right. We go to a woman who has an old foot injury and has to be careful with like those exercises on her feet, like you're just talking about. But she does walk 30 minutes daily, and she knows swimming is great. But what else can she do for her to make her bones good?
Yeah. Now, this is a very interesting question because it's sort of I'm a swimmer. I love swimming. I love swimming more than anything. I do it on a regular basis and it just keeps me relaxed and loose. And it's like I just love it. But unfortunately, swimming, these non-weight bearing exercises like swimming, cycling have not been shown to do anything to increase bone density. So what I tell people is yes, swim. Swim's great. But in terms of actually using that as something that's going to be good for your bones, it's not. And, then the question is, what about water exercises? People ask them, well, what about when I do water exercises in the pool? And there have been a few studies on that. There was one where they did jumping and all these high impact things, and it didn't show any improvement. And, another study in Japan did show when people use like weights in the water, it's light, but not that conclusive. So anyway, so the point is swimming, I would say it's not going to help your bone density. So that's I would do it as just an adjunct. And in terms of walking 30 minutes a day, and this is what happens. I see people all the time. Oh, I walk miles and miles. Well, walking is great. Look, any exercise is better than no exercise. And in the nurses' health study, where they looked at so many people, they did find that people who walk had reduced fall, reduced chance of hip fractures. I mean, it certainly helps. In terms of the bones, though, you need more. If you're really trying to simulate the bones, walking is just not enough. It's good, but it's not going to increase bone density. And you really need the strength training where the bones are, and the resistance training where the bones are contracting against gravity and that pulling and that vibrating says, hey, we need more bone here. So I would say that you have an old foot injury and you have to be careful. And you may not be able to do too much impact. Okay, so impact's out, but you could be lying on a mat lifting weights. That's where specific exercises targeting the hips, targeting the spine is going to make a difference. So that's why I so highly recommend working with someone who's going to custom design the program for you, given your injuries.
Great answer, by the way, Margie. Thank you for that info. We're going to go over to an interesting question about vitamin D now, about absorption, because I know there are people who, despite their best intentions, are just not getting enough. Their D levels persistently are low. Can you help us out on why that's going on?
Yes, and I was so happy that at the summit, Dr. Carolyn Ladowski, who deals with genetics and deals with when there's mutations or problems with certain genes, what she finds. And this is a big one for our community when people are concerned about bone health, because, and I've seen this a lot, you get for the most part, the doctors order vitamin D tests and you get to see what your number is. And there are people that are taking high doses of vitamin D and their numbers aren't increasing. They have low numbers of vitamin D, below 30, 20, and they're taking massive doses. Something is wrong. And that's not right. It just doesn't happen. So what happens, you could have a certain gene, and it's a vitamin D receptor gene. It's called VDR is the abbreviation. And it's interesting because Dr. Ladowski, she sees that all the time for people who have osteopenia and osteoporosis. A lot of times they have this gene. And so what happens is that it affects your utilization of vitamin D in the liver and kidneys because that depends on your genes. So if you have a problem with the genes and it's defective, it's really important that you know that. And there's different genetic testing that will pick this up. And so because then you need to take a different form of vitamin D that bypasses the liver, bypasses the issues that you're having. And what it is called calcifidiol, and it's a vitamin D3. You cannot get it over the counters. And so basically your doctor would have to order that for you. And that's what they found, that if you have that gene, it's just a matter of switching up your vitamin D and that form works. And because, as I said, it bypasses the liver, it goes directly to the kidneys to work on vitamin D. And, that's how it's metabolized, as I said, in the liver, then the kidneys. So it's a prescription, vitamin D3. But a lot of people aren't familiar with this. And because, a lot of us don't get the genetic testing. So it's just if you're someone it's frustrating too. Like, what do you mean my vitamin D is so low? And so if your vitamin D isn't increasing, it's really worth looking into and seeing if you have that issue with the vitamin D receptor gene.
Now we're going to go into a little question about calcium and magnesium. The
Okay.
person says, I have a problem with stomach aches when I take calcium, magnesium supplements. Do you have recommendations for those who are having stomach problems in digestion of those two vitamins?
Yeah, so let's talk about magnesium first. And that's an issue because you can take all the supplements in the world. I sort of look at it like a hose. If you're stepping on the hose, if water's coming out of the faucet and you're trying to water your plants and you're stepping on the hose, well, you're not getting any water. So if something's a problem with digestion and you're not absorbing these things, it's an issue. And it's sad because you're wasting money, you have good effort, and you're not getting the value. So we need to figure that out. And one thing that you can do is transdermal for magnesium. And so it goes in through your skin, so it bypasses everything. And I can put a link in one of the ones that I like, the transdermal. Um, and so but it's really good. So you can just sit with your feet in a bath and you can absorb the magnesium. And actually
Uh,
I have a podcast episode on that as well. So I love transdermal. That's one thing. The other thing is that you can have smaller particle size, which really change the absorption. So there's nanoparticle sizes, and they're also I had a podcast episode on that. I know Upgraded Formulas has nanoparticles and calcium as well as magnesium. So Barton Scott was a guest on and talked about that. So, what I'll do in the show notes, I'll list those episodes. But that would be my suggestion. And most important though, is work on your digestive issues. Everybody, people in art, and I see this a lot. Like people think as they get older or just in general, everybody, and you must see this, Craig, everybody has digestive issues. Oh, no big deal. I go to the bathroom every 2 days, or I have some reflux and things come up, and people just, everybody has that. It's not an issue. So not true. And you need to deal with this. It's going to affect every issue, everything in your body. And we talk about the gut a lot on the podcast and the summit because it's huge. And when you address these issues, the digestive issues, things do get better. So, yes, there are ways to get this into your system. And there are ways though, but I would definitely address the digestive issues and see what's causing the problem in the first place.
uh, Here's an interesting one. Um, since it's springtime and a lot of us are going outside to start and do work outdoors, here it goes. I have raised beds for my main gardening, but I still need to get on my knees and get on the ground to weed. How do I do that and not round my back, my shoulders? Well,
Okay. It's a great question. And I'm really glad we brought this up because it is the spring. And I just want to, for those people who are watching, if you're not watching, a lot of people just listen to this, but But I would suggest I'm gonna talk it through too, but I'm gonna show some slides, but I just wanted to show one thing. So this is a spine, this is the front, this is the back. It's like we cut through it. Can you see?
I'm pointing at it.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
pointing at my spine. Okay. Okay. But I just wanted to show that if you look what happens with, ideally we want this nice square vertebrae and we see everything's tight. And that's what I talked about quality being so important. The microarchitecture. So if you fall, you're not going to fracture. And we didn't really discuss that much here, but I just want to say that's the important thing. It's not the DEXA score. It's not. It's how it's the quality of your bones, and that is not measured on the DEXA. So we can find that out on something called the trabecular bone score, but it's the quality. We want good quality. So this shows you can see how nice and tight it is versus like a bone like here, for those who are seeing where there are holes in it. So if you fall, you're going to have this nice structure for the bones. But what I wanted to just show here is if we look here with osteoporosis, the fractures occur in the front of the spine. And what happens is they no longer become square shaped, they become wedge shaped. And so if we think of taking the spine and rounding it out, it's putting all the force in the front of the spine that's already increased risk of fractures. And there was a study done at Mayo Clinic showing when people just did rounding out forward bending exercises, they had an 89% fracture risk for people with osteoporosis in a 6-year period of time. So the point is we don't want rounding. And I know I've said this a million times on the podcast, but we don't want rounding of the spine. So now let's take us to gardening. And I'm going to show you, it's just so funny that that question came up because I recently did a whole talk for a gardening community. And so I recently did a talk for Katie Oglesby, who has a whole got gardening. She teaches people how they can grow things and how they can do their gardens. But she said a lot of people are having back problems. So I did a talk for them. So I'm just going to share a few slides in terms of so everybody can see. And if you can't see, just go. This is also on video if you're just listening, but I'll talk them through as well. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so let's just move this up a little bit. Okay, so when we look here, this is very typical. She's going to the garden and we see this person is rounded out. Her low back's rounded, her upper back's rounded. And it's not just doing exercises that's going to cause your increased risk of fractures. It's what you do during your day. You might only be exercising a couple hours a week, but all day long you're doing things. So that matters as well. So we see here she's rounding out. And if you're watching this, like what can she do? Very easily, she can just, she's going down on a knee. There's many ways you can do it. You can kneel. You can go to a bench. You can bend, you want to maintain that inward curve in your back, but you want to just catch yourself. When are you rounding out? And how much are you doing that, especially when you're gardening? Okay, we look at him too. Same thing. I should ask you, Craig, do you see what's going on with him?
Something I probably can be doing next weekend.
We see, well, no, you've learned better, I hope.
I know, I am. A rounded back.
Right. We see he's bending down just to pick this up. So these pictures, she had sent me these pictures of people, which they're of different gardening positions. And so they're not people she works with. But so I don't have the good because they didn't know how to do good. So what this person can do is bend differently using the hips and knees. Almost if you've practiced squatting, you can learn how to bend in that position. Okay, here we see it again. She's just trying to do something. So if she learns how to do bending from her hips and knees like a squat or hip hinging, where you're hinging from the hips, maintaining the inward curve in your low back, it's going to make such a difference. And here we see kids, they're down, they're squatting, they're in a position, they're not hurting themselves. I mean, this is what kids do naturally. They know how to bend from the hips. Now here, what do you think, Craig? Does he look like he's going to have a problem?
He's got something up in his, don't look at it. I can't tell if he's going forward or not, but he's
Yeah, no, he's good.
yeah.
He's standing. He's
Oh,
not bending forward. He's at the right height. So
right.
he's, whereas if he was like bending the whole time to cut, and then if he bends, he could bend from his hip. It's called the hip hinge, where you bend from the hips and you're maintaining the inward curve in your low back. And what we see here, now her back's nice and straight. So she's keeping a straight back and bending from the hips. Gonna make a very big difference. Okay. Now she's bending from the hips, but she's twisting. So it would be better if she just moved over a little bit and tried to do it straighter. But again, she's not rounding out because she's sitting on the stool and she's or the ledge. She found a way. So you have to be a little creative here. Now here, she's not bending, she's twisting and her back's probably yeah, because her legs are straight, I'm sure she's a little bit rounded here. And what do you think of this one, Craig?
She could have done better.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. She could align herself better so she's not twisting for extended periods of time. She could raise the surface. There's numerous things she could do. Exactly. Okay, and this just shows people, right? She's bending to do something quick. So they seem to be doing a better job. Okay, this is a biggie. And so many people as a physical therapist, oh my gosh, gardening season as well as snow shoveling, raking. Oh, we have so many problems. Can you see what's going on here, Craig?
Well, he's definitely rounded forward and he's not using his hips at all. So, yeah, and he's twisted.
Right, right. So he's just rounding out, rounding, and the low back's not meant to be rounded out like that because it overstretches it. So you're not getting the good support. So a few things you can use. Oh, she just shows. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, this is what I wanted to show. So you can. Oh, I see the problem. Let me go back to this for a second. So with basically what you do is you think of the shovel as an extension or the rake or whatever it is. You think of it as that you're dancing with it and you just move your whole body. So as best you can, you're moving your body, you're maintaining the curve in your back, and you're not rounding out, you're not bending from the waist. And I go into this in much greater detail and other things, but I just wanted to give people some basic information, right? She's in a good position. She looks nice and happy because that's how we want to be. But this just shows for weeding, they sell things. They sell a weeder that you can use, so you don't have to bend forward to pick things up. They sell reachers also, so there's all sorts of supplies. But this is a kneeling bench, so you can kneel on this so you don't hurt your knees, and and you can be at a better level as well. So there's lots of devices also. Oops, I'm just showing pictures. So you know what? I'm just going to go back for 1 second before I showed this. I just wanted to show this bending. So the difference between rounding out here, where you're bending from the waist versus bending from the hips. And what I showed with the shoveling is the same thing if you're mopping. You're bending from the waist and she's rounded here, where here she's going to be dancing with her broom back and forth, the motion coming very from your strong legs. Okay, so that's all I wanted to share with that.
Well, that's been very inspirational and very helpful. And I'm looking forward to learning more about uh, all things osteoporosis from you as you continue answering questions.
Yeah, see, the thing is, I recently, as a lot of you know, I had a summit, and during the summit, I had a Q&A the other day that I got, mm, I think I got almost 300 questions, and I realized that then they're so good. So we answered some of them today, but I thought, well, I'm gonna start because I wanna help everyone. I really do. That's, as you know, Craig, that's my goal. As to just and then the good news is there's so much help and there's so much that can be done, and that's why I am so passionate about this because it upsets me when the information isn't out there, and it still isn't, and that's it's getting there, and it's the people who listen to my podcast, who came to the summit, all of you, give yourself a big just a big yay because no, really, really, because you're interested in improving your health and you're taking that next step and realizing there's many pieces to this and you don't have to dial them all in at once. You don't. Just take that breath, relax. You're doing great just by learning one thing is amazing. And it's really true. And the yeah, so what I'm gonna do now, and this is new for me, the podcast is on YouTube, and I've done a few YouTube things, but I'm gonna start answering, like, one question at a time and do little YouTube videos on I'm not sure where else I'll put them, but I know I'm gonna start with YouTube, and I thought that would be a lot of people, I've asked a lot of people, people thought that was like a great idea because I get these good questions and I'll answer them if I'm working with one person or in one of my classes. But sometimes it's really great information that everybody could benefit from. So I'm going to start doing the YouTubes. And then also after the summit, some of you may know about this, but for those who don't, I also wanting to help because it is overwhelming. There's so much information. And I believe that overwhelm is our enemy. It is because it stops you in your tracks because you don't know where to start. And so I created just it's 4 classes and they're 1 hour and there's gonna be time for question and answer, but it's a roadmap. So the first one is all about evaluation, what we need to look at. Then we talk about nutrition, and then we talk about exercise and then stress and happiness because we didn't talk about this time, but I think everybody who listens to me knows that's such a big piece of it. And so that's starting on May 2nd. I think May 2nd is the date. It's Tuesday. So if anybody wants to join that, I'll have the link for it. And I think, my goal is to really help. There'll be a workbook with it, really help people. And, we kept the price really low to try to just give people give people tangible things that can help them on their path to stronger bones and a happier life. So anything else you want to ask me?
Not today. We got to go out and exercise soon, don't we?
Well, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you so much, Craig, for joining me and really helping me spread this important information.
And thank you all for listening.
Yes, we really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Craig and that I did answer some of your questions. The good news is there's going to be more information coming. So, a few things. Number one, subscribe to my YouTube channel because you'll find out when new things come up. Number two, if you're interested in really figuring out your path forward, I highly recommend coming to the Happy Bones Roadmap, and I'll have the link for that. And that starts May 2nd. And if you can't, they're at 3 o'clock Eastern time. But if you can't come live, everything's recorded, and then you can certainly watch it another time. Plus, I didn't mention this, it does come with 3 other 3 other classes. One is a strength training with resistance loops with, Joan Pagano. The second is a beginning Qigong class with Dr. Matt Jeffs, and the third is a skeletoning class with Penelope Wasserman. So you get those 3 classes that you can, use whenever you want as well. So lots of good information. And I'm really excited about it because I chose to do a live class this time. And I just love live classes. So anyway, that's available. You can also just go to tinyurl.com/happy bones roadmap. And so, but I'll have the link for that as well as some of the other links that we talked about in the show notes. So next week, I'm having questions answered on estrogen with the estrogen specialist, Dr. Felice Gersh, who's an OB-GYN and has just done so much research on this, and she's a wealth of knowledge. So I'm really excited about that. And again, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.